Hello everyone, and welcome to this addition to our Spatial Data Mining lab. I'm Reza, and this series of videos is designed to be a complement to our course material available on our website. And in this short video, I'm gonna quickly show you how to set up and install your Visual Studio Code environment for your Python programming. So in the first tutorial of our lab, in the lab website, we get familiar with setting up our Python environment. We went through installing Python through Anaconda environment. If you look at the lab website, you'll have access to the material, the necessary material, how to install Anaconda, and step by step through installing Anaconda. And we also went through introduction of JupyterLab and how create your first JupyterLab. And if you look at the course material after the installation of Anaconda, you can see what is JupyterLab and how you can open your first JupyterLab inside Anaconda and write your first Python notebook inside that one. We also had some introduction about version controlling and how to create a GitHub account and how to use JupyterLab Git plugin to do this version controlling for your code. You have access to all this material through the course website, but in this video, as we actually add into our course material, I'm gonna introduce how to install and set up Visual Studio environments, as it is one of the most popular, maybe most popular, or one of the most popular code editors in the world. It's actually interesting if you can see actually Kaggle in 2022, they had this series of surveys, and you can see if you search for this one, you can see interesting results of the survey. But the survey basically was between data scientists and machine learning specialists, and most popular programming language was Python during 2018 to 2022, and it was by far most popular actually programming language. And as you can see, most popular code editors or IDEs, Jupyter Notebook is actually the most popular one between 2018 and 2022. But you can see Visual Studio Code, or in short VS Code, is getting actually popularity during the time, and it's actually increasing sharply, getting popular between the data scientists and ML specialists. So in this video, I'm gonna show you how to set up a VS Code if you want to work with VS Code. Actually, most of our course materials is covered with Jupyter Notebook or JupyterLab, but I highly encourage you to explore VS Code as well. So installing VS Code is a bit slightly different than Anaconda and JupyterLab. Anaconda is a distribution that includes both Python and a variety of pre-installed libraries with Python. If you already installed Anaconda based on our course material, you can open your Anaconda navigator. You see the Python is already installed. If you, for example, look at the environment, you will see, for example, let me search Python here. We will see many of these, Python and many of these libraries are already installed with Anaconda. So it made it easy for you. It's install Python, it install JupyterLab and some other, code editors if you want to work it. And it's actually it's more like a whole package toolbox for scientific computing. And JupyterLab is actually a web-based interface interactive development environment, and it will be installed as part of Anaconda, and you can simply launch it. And if you launch it, you can see it will open through your browser, which because it is a web-based interactive development environment. So VS Code is a bit slightly different. VS Code is more like a standalone code editor, and it should be installed separately. If you already installed Anaconda in your system, so Python is already installed in your system. But if you haven't, it means that if you don't want to install Anaconda, you have to install Python and VS Code separately, so you can work with Python inside the VS Code. So if you haven't already installed Python, you can simply go to Python website by just Googling Python, and you can download the version for your operation system, like Windows or Mac OS or whatever. So you can just simply download the latest version. Because I already have Python in my system, I don't download it, but it's pretty straightforward. It's easy. You just download it and click next, and it will be installed in your machine. And after that, when you have Python installed, you can just simply search for VS Code. Again, it's pretty straightforward. You go to Visual Studio website, it's something like that, and you can download the VS Code for your operating system. I'm using Windows, so I download for Windows, and if you click on download, it will go to something like this website, and you can see even here it shows you a quick documentation, how to get a start, and a bit introduction for that. It's actually a good one if you want to get familiar with VS Code. You can use this documentation, and it also shows top extensions. In VS Code we have some add-ins, they call it extensions, because VS Code is a standalone and it supports multiple programming languages. It's not just for Python or C# or Java or whatever. You can actually work writing different programming languages. You just have to download and install the proper extensions. For example, if you want to write Python code, you can install Python extension on the VS Code, and you can easily start working in Python. Or if you want to work with C++ or C#, you just have to install some extensions. I will go through some extensions after we install VS Code and show you how this extension works. But for your reference, you can always look at this documentation on their website. So our file is downloaded. So we go through the installation together. We just simply click on that, and it's a pretty straightforward. We just have to follow the instructions and click on next. For example, it will ask you where you want to install it. I just leave it to the default. And because I previously had a version of VS Code, it will ask, it says we already have it, but it doesn't matter. I want to override it, and we just leave these options as a default. For example, if you want to create a desktop icon, you can check this one, or if you want to add open with code action to Windows Explorer file context menu, you can check these ones, but we just leave it to the default. And we just install it. The installation just takes a few seconds. It's a pretty lightweight, installation. So after the installation, the VS Code will open, and it should be something like this. When it's open, you should see something like this. For me, it might be slightly different because I already have VS Code installed in my machine, and you may see in the left sidebar, you may see some extensions that I have. You may not see them, but generally it's something like that. This is the opening overview of the VS Code. You can explore different tabs, different buttons. For example, here you can create a new file. If you want to create a new Python file, you can create here, or you can create a new folder or workspace. For example, I create a new folder over here because as you remember from our course material, it's always better to create a new folder for your project, each assignments, each project, so you can put all the materials, all the codes, files, everything you can put inside this. For example, I create a new test folder over here to put all of my things inside the new test folder. And when we create a folder, it shows the folder in the left side panel. It shows the Explorer. Right now I don't have anything inside that, but I can add a new file on that one. In order to add a Python file, let me first show you how to install Python extensions on this one, and then we create a new Python file. In order to be able to write a Python code, we have to install the Python extension first. In the left side panel, when you click on the extensions, this one, you will see the panel will be open. It shows already installed extensions and your VS Code, and it also has some recommendation. For me, you can see there are some already installed extensions. You may not see this many, but we can install the most necessary ones. The first one is Python. You can search for Python over here and see this Python extension. You must install this one before anything. And for installation, it's just the install button over here for each extension, or in here it should be installed. You simply can click on it, and it takes a few seconds or few minutes to be installed. And some of the extensions may require to restarting and rebooting the VS Code. It's pretty straightforward. It's not complicated. So we have to install Python extension, and after that, in order to be able to write Python notebooks, we can install the Jupyter extension as well. You can see here when you search for Jupyter, it will show you some few extensions related to Jupyter and Jupyter Notebook. You can install this few, and it will help you to be able to write as it shows here. You will be able to write notebooks, markdowns, code blocks, and it's exactly like JupyterLab inside the Anaconda, but it's inside the VS Code. So from now on, it will be exactly the same when you install these two extensions. There are more extensions. I will probably in another video, I will show you useful extensions when you want to write Python code and do data mining. But so far we need these two. And when it's installed, we go to our folder over here and try to create a new file. For example, I'm gonna create a new Python file. We can click over here to create a new file, or we can create the file from over here. For example, I wanna create a new file. When you install Python extension and Jupyter extension, you will see these two options over here. It will ask you, do you want to create a Python script, or you want to create a Jupyter notebook? For example, right now I want to create a sample Jupyter notebooks over here. And then when I click on it, it will appear as a code block, exactly like what it is in the JupyterLab. I can have my, for example, first print statement, hello, for example, world. And we should save it first. We can simply save it and define a new name for it. For example, I'm gonna create a test 01 in my folder, and it will now, it is saved right now. And you can see here, you can add a code block, markdown block, and run cells. These bottoms are more or less like the JupyterLab. But first here, as I mentioned, this VS Code is a standalone. We have installed it separately than the Python. Here we have Python, we have VS Code. We should tell VS Code that we wanna use the installed version of Python in our system. When you install Jupyter Notebook and Python extension, you will see this bottom in top right over here, the select kernel option. We select the kernel. It's actually a Python kernel. It will ask you a Python environment or existing Jupyter server. We choose our Python environment, and it will show some of the installed Python in your system. Right now, because I installed both Anaconda and Python separately, it will show me two versions. One of them is Python version 3.11 that is installed with the Anaconda when I was installing Anaconda, and I have installed Python 3.12 individually, separately for myself. So we can pick one of them. I will just go with the Python version 3.12 over here. I pick it, and from now on, I can run my Python codes, and it will be run with this. When it's selected, you can see this kernel changed to Python 3.12, and I can run my code. Okay, I have some typo over here. So print hello world works over here, and you can create a markdown, or like with this over here, for example, hello all, and you can see we can have our markdown over here. We can edit it like this with this bottom, or when we can finish it, we can check it like this, and we always can save it, and it's now saved in our folder. It's exactly, from now on, it's exactly like JupyterLab. We can write our code, our blocks, and our markdowns over here. The only thing that is left is to connect our VS Code to our GitHub. So in order to do the control versioning, I'm assuming that you already have gone through the instructions for creating a GitHub account, and creating a GitHub account, having an online repository, all those things, and these are all available in the course website. I'm assuming that you have created your own personal access token, whatever that is necessary for doing the code versioning. Only difference is instead of going through JupyterLab Git plugin, we are going through a VS Code plugin. So in my GitHub account, I have access to my repositories over here. For example, one of my repositories is ENGO assignments. For example, I want to work with this one. As we saw in the tutorials, we can have the online link of our remote repositories over here. We need this link when we want to clone this online repository to our local computer to work with it. We need this online link, and we need our credentials, our access token, and username and or password. So for example, let's assume that this is my first online repository. You know how to create an online repository based on the tutorials, and I want to clone that online repository into my local system over here. So in this folder, I will have access to all those online materials, and I can then change it and push the changes to that one. So in order to do the connect to GitHub, we have to you can see this source control bottom over here. You can click on this. Right now it says we have to download and install Git on our system. It doesn't matter if it's Windows or Mac or Linux. We have to first download Git. It's pretty straightforward. We just click on this link. It will go through the Git website, and you can download the Git for your machine. I already downloaded it, so I just go through the installation. The installation is not hard. You just have to click on next and follow the instruction. Unless you are familiar with Git and installing Git and you want to change things, I suggest you to just leave all the options to the default and just follow the instructions. So because I already had a version of Git, it says it already exists, but it doesn't matter. I want to override it. I don't change these checkboxes. I don't want to change the default settings, and I suggest don't change the default settings unless you know what you are doing. So just next and a few more next. Just leave all of them to these default settings. You can explore them for yourself and see what are the differences, but just leaving them with the default works fine for us. And it's for us as a beginners, it's just perfectly fine for us to just follow the default settings, and then we install it. It only takes a few seconds. It's pretty straightforward. You just have to install Git like this, and I don't want to see the release note. And while it's installed, you just have to you still can see this one. It's you just have to reboot and restart your VS Code, so you will see it. You will see this one disappear. I just close VS Code and open it one more time so that it will understand that I have installed the Git for my Windows. So when I open, I am again in the same folder. If you are not in the same folder, you can open the folder over here. And when I go to the source control, you will see it has changed. It now understands that we already installed the GitHub, and it's like exactly like JupyterLab. It says we haven't Git repository in our folder, we have to define it, and then we are able to clone our online repository to this one. So I just initial a repository over here, and it is ready for me to commit, but I want to first clone my online repository. So I click on options over here. You can do all these things through command line, but I'm gonna first go through the interface. It's easier to understand, but later on we go through the command line as well. So when you click on the cloning, it's here, it'll ask you clone from the GitHub, and you can click on this one. So right now it has access to my GitHub, and it's showing all my repositories over here. But for you as the first time, because I already had Git installed in my system, it has this information. But for the first time, it will ask for a credential, and it's exactly like JupyterLab. You have to enter your username and your personal access token or your password, so GitHub knows that who you are and will give you the access to your own repositories. So as I said, I wanna clone my repository in the GitHub. I can copy the link over here, or I can browse through the list of my repositories. I just paste the link over here, and it will show me the repository, and I clone it, and again it will ask me. I say okay, I wanna have my folder to clone it into my folder, and it will just take a few seconds to download all the information and clone the repository to your local machine. Okay, when it's cloned, you can open and have access to this to all the materials from your online repository. For me, it was a big folder. It will show all the materials for me over here, and it will we can see it will create it inside this one, and it is my folder over here. It will be created over here, and from now on we can start editing our codes or whatever, everything. For example, here let me just create another Jupyter notebook over here. Again, print hello world, and we can save it over here with the name and run it to make sure our code works. Okay, yeah, it works. And when we save our work, we'll see the color change over here, and it will actually show that we have some untracked changes. It's basically exactly like the JupyterLab. If we go click on the source control extension, we will see we have some changes. These are untracked changes. It will show the change to us, and we can stage the changes. It will go through the staged one, and after that we can have a summary of what we did. Added a new notebook, for example, and then we can do the committing, and after that we can push the sync button. The sync, basically it says we have one changes that it's actually the sync right now works as a push, or we can do the push or pull over here. If there are some changes in the online repository, for example, our collaborator, our friends has made some changes, this sync actually do the pull first and then the pushing. So we just push the sync button, and it's all done. It will be synced in our online repository. And if I go to my GitHub repository, for example, if I refresh over here, I will see that a new notebook over here right now, it is added to this one. So this is installing VS Code, Python, working with VS Code Git extension from the scratch, and all the necessary things that you need to work with Git extension and do the version controlling with the VS Code. And I highly suggest, you explore the VS Code. You can explore other extensions. I will try to create another video to show you some of the famous, most popular extensions that makes it makes the coding very easy and interesting for you. But you can at the same time check for this also, customize the view of the VS Code with the setting. You can customize the background color, the fonts, everything. You can change it to, I don't know, white, black, or change the font size or whatever within the settings. You can do everything that you want. And I hope this video was helpful for you. And I would appreciate any feedbacks or comments, or if you have any questions, you can always post your comments here or reach me through the email. I'll try my best to respond as fast as I can, and see you in the next video.